Welcome to another episode of Make Mental Health Matter. I am your host, Kelli Melissa Reinhart, and thank you so much for watching. If this happens to be your very first time watching the Make Mental Health Matter show, welcome, and I'm so excited for you to be here. If you happen to be watching it on any of the streaming platforms, make sure that you add us into your wish list, your watch list, your want to watch later list, because I promise you, you will not want to miss another episode. I have guests lined up actually since I made the transition to Mondays only now at this prime time of 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I have amazing, incredible guests that are lining up to give you resources, information, and really have those conversations that nobody else wants to, because mental health, suicide prevention, talking about substance use, and really getting our stories out into the world is what this whole show is based on, is giving you, the viewers, resources and information of things that you, or people that you may not have known in the past, or that you may not have heard their story. And really, it's a way for you to maybe identify some things that are within their story that you know now that there is a place for hope. And that really truly is the whole goal of the Make Mental Health Matter. And without further ado, I am going to bring up one of my guests for tonight. So Jeff Pearson, he is a speaker, author, business owner, and TV host, and you will hear more about that. So let me bring him up now. Jeff, thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This is cool.
Yay. I am I'm excited to have you on the show because I know we're both on E360 TV. We're both on the Achieve TV channel,
Yep.
and we've been talking about forever to come on each other's shows. But I would love for you to just share with the audience a little bit about your story.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. This is awesome. I've yeah, I've seen your show a few times, and it's been like, oh man, that would be so fun. So I appreciate you having me on. It's great. So what we're doing, I mean, the main thing that we're doing, we've got two things going on. I feel like I'm split some days. I've got a nonprofit that's behind me here, that you can see the little sign here. It says Hydro with Hope. And hydro is short for something called hydrocephalus, which I know is kind of a tongue twister that not a lot of people have heard about. Not a lot of people have even heard the word. It's more commonly known as water on the brain. You say that and people say, oh, yeah, I've heard about that. What is it? I don't know what it is. So I was born with something that has made my life very interesting. At 2 weeks old, at my 2-week checkup, they found the what's called aqueductal stenosis, which led to the hydrocephalus, which means that one of my ventricles in my brain was actually blocked. And the ventricles in your brain, little anatomy lesson here. Your ventricles are in your brain. You've got 3 or 4 of them in there. I can't remember if there's 3 or 4, but your brain is continuously producing cerebral spinal fluid. And if you have nowhere for it to go, it can store up, it can compress your brain, it can swell your skull, and can eventually kill you. Right. So it's a serious thing. So the fact that it was caught at 2 weeks old for me was great. It can happen to anybody at any time. But for me, I was born with it. One of my ventricles was blocked somehow. And so they said, okay, brain surgery it is. So at 2 weeks old, under the knife I went and had my first brain surgery. And I've had 7 total, 15 surgeries overall, but 7 of them are brain surgeries. 4 of them have been in the last 9 years. And the last one was a couple of years ago in October of 2021. And so during one of our follow-up visits for one of those surgeries in March of 18, my wife and I are sitting there waiting for the doc to come in to talk about all the things I can't understand from the images, the imaging and the x-rays and the CT scans and all that stuff. And we heard a conversation on the other side of the wall, in the office, the nice thin walls at the doctor's office, and couldn't really hear the words, but you could hear the tone. And you could hear that it was just, they were distraught. You could just hear the the tone of the conversation wasn't great. And I thought, God, all I wanted to do was run next door to that room, give them a hug, tell them it was going to be okay and answer their questions and just be there for them. But HIPAA doesn't like that. So I said, okay, I'll stay here. And, but on the way home from that appointment, Catherine and I just looked at each other and said, we got to do something. We got to do something. So we formed Hydro with Hope, short for hydrocephalus. And we created the nonprofit. And it is designed to provide tangible resources for people in the hydrocephalus community, such as this journal here that we wrote last year, which we can talk about that later if we want. But and then also coaching that we're going to gear up for in 2024. I'm actually planning a retreat, an online retreat, coming up at the end of January, hopefully, if we can get everything squared away in time. All for the hydrocephalus community, because it's already hard enough having brain surgery. We don't need to add to it. So that was kind of that got the ball rolling.
Wow. I mean, I remember the first time you and I talked and you told me your story, and I didn't even know it was a thing either. And I think that is in society, right? Like, it's not known. Brain surgery, of course, we know what that is, but hydrocephalus is not something that people go around and talk about, of course. Right. And luckily, you were so young when you got your diagnosis and they were able to do brain surgery, but it's a lifelong journey. And I think that's what really scares people. But knowing that there is an organization out there like your own that can give you that information and give you the hope piece so that you don't have to feel like either you're going to lose yourself or lose somebody else that you love.
I mean, that and what struck me about this condition when we started down this road to form this organization was, I mean, just because you're born with something doesn't mean you know anything about it, right? So I'm looking into it like, how common is this anyway? I just kind of figured I was just a needle in the haystack, and I didn't really know. Growing up, I think I knew 2 other people in my whole life that ever had it. So I was like, well, maybe it's rare. It was just a fluke, whatever. It's ridiculously common. It's just as common as Down syndrome. It's more common than spina bifida. Every 15 minutes in the United States, somebody's having brain surgery to address hydrocephalus. It's about 1 in every 800 babies born in this country is born with it. So that's like over 400,000 people every year being. It's really common, but nobody talks about it because I don't know. Down syndrome and spina bifida, I say those two and everybody nods. Everybody knows what those are. Hydrocephalus, it's like a tongue twister that nobody talks about. So that's I had no idea it was that common. So that's just crazy. So we need to get the word out, is the point, which is why we're here.
Yeah. Wow. I was going to ask that question. I'm like, how common is it? Because again, up until you and I talked, I didn't. And the only other thing that like comes to my mind that I would even, it's not like comparing, but like aneurysms, right? Like that's another brain condition that we talk about, but we don't really talk about them. And they're so much more prevalent than people even know. But wow, that's amazing how prevalent it is. And we don't talk about it, and nobody, maybe because they don't know how to pronounce it when they see the word, I don't know, but
yeah, it's true. I mean, it's a big hairy word, man, but that's why we didn't put the whole word in our organization name,
right.
Shrink it a little bit so it's easier to say. Hydro's real easy.
Yes. So what if I mean, did you do research behind to really understand like what are the signs that people would need to watch out for? Like, is there something that as a parent they might be able to just be looking for potentially?
I have no idea. I am not a parent of somebody with hydrocephalus, so I really wouldn't be able to tell you too much very intelligently about that. But and my parents weren't either, because they didn't know until the 2-week checkup. So, I mean, a lot of people find out in utero. In fact, I just got I just got a message from somebody who joined our group on Facebook. We have a group and a page. We're all over social media. Just go find Hydro with Hope everywhere. But in our private, like, members only group, we qualify that the group. The page is for everybody. The group is for families with hydrocephalus. And so one of them said, we're coming to this group because we want to ask questions, because we just found out that I think they said that the 20-week ultrasound, they found out that their baby might have hydrocephalus. So you can find out. This was 46 years. I'll be 47 here in about a month or two. So it's been a while since they had to diagnose me. But so now probably it's a lot easier to do. I don't really know, but they said they found out at 20 weeks of pregnancy. So, we'll see. But we're happy to help no matter where you find out,
Wow.
So.
Yeah, I mean, the technology today, of course, has come so far
Right.
with everything. But yeah, that's interesting that they can even find out in your utero. And then, my assumption is they have to wait till the baby's born to see if it's still there or not, and go from there.
Probably. We had somebody reach out to us about a year ago that was, see, this is why it's so cool to have an online organization and not a brick and mortar. We were debating when we were forming Hydro with Hope, and I'm so glad we went online, because a couple reached out to me from United Arab Emirates, of all places, halfway around the world, and their little boy was born way premature, and was diagnosed with hydrocephalus. But to your point, yes, they had to wait. I don't think he got to have surgery until they kept him in ICU for like 3 months. Mm-hmm. And then finally, because things had to develop to the point that he could survive surgery, probably. And then they did. And now, man, they just sent me a picture of him the other day, and he's just the cutest thing you've ever seen. But yeah, it can be scary when you get that diagnosis, and especially when they're that little, oh, crazy.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah. Just brain surgery in general. I feel like if anybody's going in for brain surgery, you're like, that's a little freaky. But it's definitely, the brain is just fascinating, I think, across the board. But just knowing that some of these, I guess you would call it a disorder.
Condition. I think that's what I usually call it. Yeah.
Condition. Yeah. Those, they're easier now to diagnose. But it is interesting that it's so prevalent.
Yeah. Well, and it's no easier to get the diagnosis. Just because they can figure out what it is doesn't mean it's like, oh, great, I was looking forward to that.
Right.
So, the management of it, the surgical technique, the equipment they use to treat it, the shunts have come a long way, but they still have a long way to go. That's the shunts they use now still have like the highest failure rate of any medical device in history. Even after decades of use and development and all that kind of stuff, it's still, the average lifespan of these things is only 2 to 3 years. So the fact that I have escaped 46 years of life with only 7 brain surgeries, I count myself fortunate. I know people that have had more than 10 times that many surgeries in less time of lifetime. So it's unbelievable.
So
there's always work to do.
Yeah. So there's no way, like, the brain doesn't repair itself. It's something that's just like a lifelong thing that you'll have to continue to get stints.
For some people, I've only known one person that this has happened to, potentially 2, but one that I met a few years ago, and he said that he outgrew his body outgrew the necessity of the shunt. He still has it, because once it's in there, it's like, might be, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? You don't want to go hacking around in there just to get it out, just in case. But he doesn't need it anymore. It's not functioning, to keep him alive. Mine still is. Most people still are, but so you just don't know. It's so personal of a thing. It depends on the body. So
wow, that's really interesting,
right?
And so Hydro with Hope, you open this community to people that have hydrocephalus, and it's what specifically do you guys do with the community?
So, the biggest thing I wanted to create with the community, with the group specifically, I mean, we have a page that's totally public. Anybody can jump on there and like it, or however you do pages. I don't know on Facebook, but we created it specifically, the group, because we had seen so many groups. I'm probably part of a dozen other groups related to hydrocephalus, and so many of them, God bless them, more power to you. But going through in these groups, they focus, and I have a feeling this is similar with a lot of conditions out there. It's very negatively slanted a little bit, which understandably you're distraught. You don't know what to do. Maybe you're in a situation that you want answers, right? And you're like, what do I do? My head hurts and my shunt might be failing and I'm upset. But we wanted it to be a group where people could get their questions answered and get encouragement, man, because you can only do so much when everybody's in the pit. You know what I'm saying? You want some kind of redeeming value to it, and so that's what we're trying to create is, life doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful, and so, okay, yes, you have this diagnosis, and yes, it's scary, and yes, it might be very uncertain, especially if you're just starting down this road, but there are things to help you. There are people that have been down this road before, and they are willing to help, and so that's what we wanted to create with the group. And I feel like that's where we are. I mean, when you go to the group, that's what you see. You see a lot of questions being asked, and you see a lot of, and the page too, but specifically the group, because it's geared towards people with hydrocephalus. So.
I love that. Like, you're totally speaking my language, because I mean, just in the mental health space, right? Like, I am in so many groups that are much more negative. Like, the feedback that you're getting is really negative, right? And I did the same with the Make Mental Health Matter community. It was like, you can come in and share whatever you want, but I also am going to prompt you to look at the positives versus the negatives, because I feel like there's so much in this life, right? There's so many negative things that we could potentially focus on. But if we can shift our attention to the positive, or like getting more information, more resources, and not like just staying in that negative space, like, it could be so much better.
Well, there's always hope. Always, always, always. There's always hope. Even if you're in the darkest, deepest hole that you've ever been in, there's still hope. There's still always hope. And one of the things that, when we put this together the journal, we said we wanted to have quotes from other hydro warriors, right? We affectionately call ourselves. And so we've been communicating with these people for months. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put this person in the book, this person in the book. And one of the quotes that I said, my wife said, well, it's your journal. You're creating this. You have to have at least one quote in there. I said, well, okay, I don't listen to myself. What do I say? And so what we came up with for mine, which I say to people all the time, apparently, is your attitude is the only thing you have 100% control over. The only thing, really, honestly, you're living in an illusion of control in this life, really. So, but the only thing you have control over is what goes on in your brain, which is in your attitude, So, and so that's where the hope comes from. You can create that yourself. It's kind of that part's up to you.
I love that. What we're going to do is go to a quick sponsored break, but once we come back, let's talk a little bit more about that hope piece. And then I also want to chat a little bit about your show that is on E360 TV too. So we'll be right back after this sponsored message.
Jeff Pearson here, host of Invisible Condition, where we talk about all the people who are living and thriving with all those conditions that you can't necessarily see from the outside. Join me every Tuesday and Friday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time on E360 TV.
And like that, we're back.
And like that, we're back.
Right? And we're back. I like the commercial being right in there because then I could see your book a lot better too. So
there you go.
Yes. You had mentioned, well, if anybody's just joining us, thank you so much for joining the Make Mental Health Matter show. I am talking to my guest, Jeff. We are talking about the condition called hydrocephalus, and something that not everybody knows about, but it is a brain condition that ultimately it is a lifelong condition. It's something that you potentially have to get stents in your brain, have brain surgery really often, and it's much more prevalent than I even knew that it was. And something that you said before we went to that sponsored break was that there's always hope. And that's, I know why you named it Hydro with Hope, because there's always hope. And I know even when I talk about in the mental health world, there is always hope and recovery. And a lot of people don't focus on that. They really focus on the negative aspects, like what's physically or mentally happening to them right at that moment. And not that it's bad, because I think feeling our emotions and going through the process is an important part of life. But we also have to have that space that we can have this piece of hope, this space that we can really focus on the positives versus the negatives. And you made me think of, because just even going back to the commercial that I showed, that's one for BCC Evolution. And I had a mentor come in and say, it's really like happy, like you need to play on on the pain points, like the negative aspects. And it's been sitting with me for quite some time. And I'm like, man, whenever I see those other commercials that come up for like all the dogs or the kids, like I feel really sad. And I'm like, I don't want my commercials to be that way. But yes, something that pops in my head.
Yeah, I get it. Emotion is good when you, especially with a commercial, because you want people to remember it. And emotion always remembers, you associate that music with that emotion, with that image. Yeah. I mean, just so you know, your commercial is one of my favorites, so it's a good one. I really like it, and the music that you've changed the music on it. Actually.
I did. I actually changed the stats and the music.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to hit you up for the new version of it.
Yeah, I'm gonna change it again. So once I change it again, I'll let you know. Yes. But I want to talk a little bit about your show also. So can you share a little bit about your show and your guests that you bring on?
Yeah, thank you. I have, like you said, I have a show on Achieve TV on E360 TV as well. It's called Invisible Condition, and we the tagline for it is "It's not all in your head," because a lot of people with invisible conditions, and what I mean by that, I mean we knew that the hydrocephalus hour probably wouldn't last very long, so that's one of thousands of invisible conditions out there that people are dealing with around the world. And so we said, we got to open it up and make it more broad so it's more appealing to more people. So that's why we landed on that name and that tagline. But we have people on the show that are living and thriving in spite of their invisible condition. So, I mean, I've had best-selling author. I mean, people that are living with these lifelong, life-threatening conditions, and they're still writing books that become bestsellers. They're hosting their own shows. They're hosting podcasts. They're creating apps. They're creating companies and organizations. I mean, it's just insane. I think that's kind of inherent in people. A lot of people that I've met, anyway. I don't know. Maybe I'm hanging out in a different circle than other people. That maybe you're not on this same page, but for me, I have hung out with so many people that yes, they're born with this condition, and yes, maybe it makes their life absolutely miserable at times, but they didn't let them stop them, and they call it, they use it as a catalyst to create something to benefit other people, because they said, I want to help. Okay, I was born with this. I want to help other people that have been born with the same thing to be able to pick up where I left off, and kind of have that stepping stone to a better life, right? Like with parents and kids, you always want your kids to do better than you did. You want the kids to have a better outcome or whatever. Like you want to help them avoid the stuff that you were stupid on.
Yeah.
And so kind of thing. And so these amazing people that I've had on my show are doing just that. I mean, from around the world. I've had people from, good Lord, several continents on the show, and it's just fascinating to hear all the stories and all the different organizations out there that are doing things I never would have even dreamed of, in my wildest imagination. So it's really fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, I love when again we talked and you had told me that it's an invisible condition, because really, truly, I mean, and that's where like you and I align so well, because mental health is an invisible condition, right? Like
Yeah.
it may be in your brain, you don't physically show what's going on all the time. Like it's not like a scar that's there all the time.
Right.
It's something that you can't see. And that's, I mean, being able to have these conversations and have people from across the world that are able to share their journey and that place of hope, and whether it is hydrocephalus or another invisible condition, I just think that's so amazing that you are also opening up that conversation and sharing their experience with the world too.
Yeah, it's been so cool. I mean, it chokes me up to think about some of these guests. It's just insane somehow how much they've endured. And I mean, even stuff as simple as, I mean, everybody knows what, the mental, like, well, I don't have to tell you, the mental health side of things. I mean, we had a bipolar pastor on our show one time. We've had people with schizophrenia, ADHD, learning disabilities, PTSD, of course, moral injury, which is a little different than PTSD, but still kind of goes, in the military. He was a medic in the I think. Sorry, Dave. Don't hate me. I'm trying to remember what branch. I'm sorry, it escapes me. But Dave Nordell, he's amazing. He told a crazy story that just, I mean, moral injury is just a huge thing, but you would never know. I mean, it was probably 20 years ago that he retired from the military, but that experience sticks with him forever, and you would never know it by looking at him. So all these different guests, it's, yeah, the invisible part is the fascinating part. It's so
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I mean, I'm sure you're like I am, and you learn something new from all your guests that come
Oh my
on.
god.
You're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that.
Right? I know that, seriously. I mean, especially with all these conditions now, I kind of, I almost feel like that guy at the party that knows, like the jack of all trades, but master of none. Like somebody says something about a condition. I'm like, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. Or say, it's like, say some line that the guest said during the show, and they think you're like the hottest thing since sunburn, because you recognized what they said. But
Right.
honestly, it's from all these guests. It's amazing how much you soak up and like learn from all these other people. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so I'm curious, like, I mean, I know you're doing the show, and then you have Hydro with Hope and the groups, and you're really trying to support as many people as you possibly can.
Mhm.
I'm just curious, like, with this condition, has it limited you in any ways throughout life, or like, how has that looked for you?
I mean, yes, definitely. But so I'll start my an example from childhood. Say, yes, it limited me in the sense that there is a device in my head going into my brain that's keeping me alive. Right. So obviously, football was out. Soccer, not a great idea. Contact sports was basically off the table. Um, but the brilliant thing, my parents, I gotta shout out to my parents here for a second, because they never made me feel like I was sick. I mean, God, God willing. I mean, thank God I had the childhood I did, which is 3 revisions, a few other surgeries, but really nothing terribly life altering that required me to stay in the hospital for a long time or anything like that. I had a very normal childhood, and part of that is because of my parents. And they knew that soccer was a bad idea. They knew that football would probably not be the best idea. But they never said to me once, I never remember them ever saying to me one time, "You're sick, you have this condition, so you can't do that." It was always, instead of, oh, if they saw that I was kind of interested in something that might not be the best idea, they'd be like, well, as an example, oh, how about band? Let's direct you over here. How about the clarinet? How about choir? Let's do that in high school instead of, contact sports. And so and same thing growing up, they did, I think they underestimated my enthusiasm towards skateboarding and snowboarding, because that probably could have killed me just as fast as football. But and of course, back in the 80s and 90s, nobody wore helmets, so I'm lucky to be alive, honestly. But that was the coolest thing, though. They never made me feel like I was less because I had a condition. And growing up, yes, the first 36 years on this planet, I had virtually no problems with. I mean, yes, you had to have surgery, but every time you had surgery, it was fixed and you moved on, right? Mm-hmm. No big deal. Everything was great. And then right about 10 years ago, that changed a little bit. And I've had 6 surgeries in the last 10 years, and 4 of them have been revisions, brain surgeries to replace the shunt. And it's been all for different reasons, and it's been all for crazy things. And I've had all kinds of weird side effects and things that have gone wrong in surgery, and but I still carry that with me, that life doesn't have to be perfect, so it's still okay. You can still have a full, amazing life, even with, I mean, yes, maybe you have to spend, like I had to spend 3 weeks in the hospital and have 2 brain surgeries within 24 hours, one time. It was crazy, and yes, that led to a solid year of nonstop migraines after that. It was awful. But you keep looking, you keep searching, you don't quit. The doctor, I went back to the surgeon, and he literally told me, well, I guess you're just going to have to live with headaches.
What?
That was my response too. I said, excuse me, thank you very much. Don't let the door, hit you on the way out. I'm not going to listen to that. Mm-mm. So we looked and looked and looked and found something alternative that got rid of them completely. I haven't had a migraine like that in years. But if I would have listened to the doctor, I'd still be on the couch. And so it's just crazy, the amount of the amount of things that you learn along the way with all this stuff. So yeah.
I think that's a true testament to advocating for yourself, right? Like, mm-hmm. It really, even though the doctor told you that you would have to live with migraines, you're like, no, that's not happening. But I can find an alternative, or go find another doctor, right? Like, if it's available to you and you're able to, you have to travel or whatever it might be. But man, yeah, they should never give somebody that answer. It's like, why would you?
I know. Well, and speaking of traveling, for the right answer, this is gonna, and I again, my parents, I cannot say enough about them. They called me after this last surgery in 21. I was left with large motor tics that were, it was to the point that it would just, the whole right side of my body was just out of control, and I couldn't control it. It was all the time. And my filter in my brain was gone. like the filter that blocks out background noise so you can have a conversation with somebody in a crowded place. And it doesn't just, that was gone. So it was like everybody in the room, I was taking it all in. My brain couldn't block anything out. So having a conversation like this in a room full of people was almost impossible. And so I was a hermit, basically. I couldn't go out of the house hardly. But my parents called, and they live in Oregon now, and they found somebody in the town they live in, and they said, you got to come out and try this. I think it might help. And it did. And I went out there, and it helped tremendously. And so the tics had almost gone away. And my filter is back, and I feel like I got my life back again. I mean, this keeps happening, because I keep going outside the box, outside of traditional Western medicine, and looking elsewhere, because I mean, I don't fault them for it. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for skilled surgeons and good doctors. But I feel like there should be a meeting in the middle between alternative and traditional medicine, because they kind of know what they're talking about too. And there's so much more medical, more clinical backing and research and proof of this thing's working, that I feel like those two communities need to come together more. And I think we would have a more well society, mentally and physically, if they would do that. But they're so afraid to say anything that doesn't line up with, the model of the doctor, the traditional model of medicine. It's just I know it's a big bite to chew, but I feel like that's part of our mission too, is to try to bring those together a little bit, because they should be.
Yeah. No, and I think that's huge. Also, I have heard so many times, like in my classes, in the mental health classes that I do, that like nurses and doctors and teachers and people that go to school for a very long time, right? The information that we're giving them is nothing that they have learned. And I understand that in the traditional school setting, there's only so much time and credits and all those things that you can't possibly absorb everything or get all of it right up front. But I 100% totally agree with you, is that, I mean, my son, he had seizures when he was a year and a half old, and his last episode, they were going to put him on Keppra, which is like a really strong, really strong anti-seizure medication. And he became violent. I mean, like punching, scratching, hitting me.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this? They're like, oh yeah, those side effects will go away after 2 weeks. I was like, do not put that stuff in my kid's body. I'm sorry, but we are walking out of here without that in his body. And I chose an alternative route also, a holistic route with him too. And I say we because it was a huge experience for me as a parent, but he hasn't had any seizures ever since, and he's almost 9 years old. So
nice. Well done. Yeah. Talk about advocating. Yeah, you got to. Well, and what I say kind of jokingly, but actually kind of serious, is they're just practicing. That's why they call it practicing medicine. Because what do you go to school for? You don't go to school to cram a bunch of knowledge in your head and hope to God you recall it later. Because that's I know people think that's what school is for. School is to learn how to learn. That's what you go to school for. The K through 12 thing, you go there to learn how to learn. And then when you get out, now you know how to learn. Now you go to college, if that's the route you take, or you go to graduate school, you go to med school, you go to whatever. Now you know how to learn. Now you learn all those things that you can apply in the marketplace. But even after you get through your 10 years, 12 years, whatever, if you specialize in something like neurosurgery, you're in for, I don't even want to know. But even once you get through all that, your true learning really begins the first day on the job, because all that school taught you is the benchmark, is the benchmark of knowledge that you should know to start. The experience is what really, in my life anyway, in my limited years of experience, that's where you learn, is from experience. And so I can't blame the doctors for telling me, well, I guess you're just going to have to live with headaches. They just hadn't learned enough about other things
Mm.
to be able to say, maybe you should try this, you know? So it's just a process, you know? And so as a person with a child with something that needs to be advocated for, my parents probably did too. I don't know. I don't remember. They must have done it when I was, you know, in another room. But that's huge. I'm so like kudos to you for being that advocate because you have to be. You cannot just lie down and take what they give you most of
Yeah.
the time. It doesn't turn out well that way.
Right.
So they work for you. Like every other industry. We understand that. You go to buy a car, buy a dishwasher, go to a restaurant. You know, go to whatever. You understand that you're the customer and they're the person that works at the place that you're going to, right? Like, but if you don't like the service they're providing, you're going to go somewhere else. You're going to get a second opinion. You're going to like a mechanic, right? Or a whatever. Why don't we do that in medicine? Why don't
Mm.
we do that in the medical world? They are providing a service. We are the customer. Why are we not questioning more? Why are we not doing that? I don't understand. We've put the medical community on a different level. And yes, they provide a lot of amazing services that maybe deserve that level, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't question things, you know, and get answers when we need them. And if they won't give us the answers, go somewhere with it that you'll get them, you know.
That's like a whole nother like topic of
I know.
conversation that
We
I
can do a
could
whole other
totally
show
have.
on that. Yeah,
Right?
I know.
I'm like, I totally 100% agree. Is like, why don't we challenge the status quo there? And why doesn't the medical field like challenge the insurance and all these different things, right? Because the
Pharmaceutical companies and oh my god,
yeah, the
yeah,
level of care, all those, but
yeah,
I guess that it really truly goes back to that advocating for ourselves, being able to advocate for others. And I love that your parents advocated for you and they
yeah,
really kind of deterred your attention when they knew that maybe it wasn't going to be safe for you,
yeah,
which is amazing. So yeah, totally kudos to your parents too, and just being able to raise you in a safe, supportive environment that allowed you to flourish and not focus on the negative of the condition that you had. And that's just, I
yeah,
think, simply amazing that they were able to do that. Plus then
yeah.
it led you into this place that you were able to start your own nonprofit, and
Yep.
now you're helping others and sharing other people's invisible conditions, which is just incredible.
It's so cool. I'm so excited to be doing this. And actually, speaking of my parents, this won't take long. But speaking of my parents, I'm gonna just do something real quick. It's just like it's like a 1 page thing. I gotta just read you something real quick. It's out of the book. If nobody had it, we can get it on our website, hydrowithhope.com. And my parents actually wrote the foreword
Ooh.
for the book, which I said, Dad, please, you got it. You like they're so good at putting things to pen to page and just writing stuff. It's so cool. So it's just a couple paragraphs, but it says as parents of this will tell you what kind of people they are. So as parents of a child born with hydrocephalus, it is an honor that we would be asked to write the forward for this amazing publication. And we continue this journey alongside you all. The term hydro warrior brings to mind the great Viking ships that sailed the seas of the world. These warriors would leave port with a mission to explore, discover, and conquer. They would drop their oars into the water in unison and pull together, seeking victory in the face of many challenges. We hope that as you turn the pages of this journal, you will become the author of your own victory, and your story will inspire the many doctors, nurses, family, and friends that are affected when the diagnosis of hydrocephalus is presented. Whether your journey has just begun for you, whether your journey has just begun or you have faced the difficult days of recovery and revisions for many years, this will be your chance to record the emotions, the challenges, and the accomplishments during this season of life. Our greatest prayer is that during this adventure, you will be able to use your personal story as a treasure chest of memories and nuggets of wisdom that can be referred to, and that you will feel the powerful healing spirit of God working in your life. And so that was that. When they sent that to me, I my wife cried. It's so cool. I'm so thankful that they did that and were able to, that we're willing to contribute to it. So, and it's true, it's a community, just like like he was talking about the Vikings, and I mean they pulled in unison, and if we can do that, I think we get a lot more accomplished, and so our community, our Hydro with Hope community, it's so cool because you meet people and you get perspectives you didn't have before, and you get um, information you didn't have before, and you hear from people you probably never would have met in your life, and it's all because there's a group, and so community and giving people a voice, that maybe didn't have one before.
That's amazing. And Jeff, your link is down there. So if you want to
I
go to
see it.
Hydro with Hope.
Yes, we're redoing the website. It should be out here really really soon. I gotta touch base with him again, but he's revamping the whole website, so it should be new and cool looking, and very very soon. So check it out.
That's awesome. Yeah. So go to the website. And if anybody wants to further connect with you, how can they do that?
So the best way to reach out is either Jeff at hydrowithhope.com or invisible condition at e360tv.com. If anybody knows of somebody that has an amazing story that wants to tell that story to our audience, I would be honored to have a conversation and jump on a call with you and see how we can get your story out.
Amazing. And I will be one of your guests coming up soonish. So I love that we can go on each other's shows
Yeah,
because I think it's just so important. And I'm going to drop that website one more time.
beautiful.
But any final words that you would like to share with the audience?
I'm gonna grab this one more time. There is there's a tiny little thing down here. Having lived with hydrocephalus for over 45 years, I can say three things with 100% certainty. Number one, God is faithful all the time. Number two, God is in control, and that's a good thing. And number three, life does not have to be perfect to be amazing. So I think that is my message, because people are too focused on, especially on social media. You see all the perfect, Instagram, whatever, and Facebook pictures, and you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. People are out. Everybody suffers. Everybody goes through hard times, especially people with conditions that are lifelong. So, just grace. Just show grace. That's all I got.
I love that. And I am so grateful that you chose to come on my show and share this with our audience. And just having you be on the show, sharing your experience, letting us in a little bit, and understanding about what hydrocephalus is and how we can be a part of your community too. So thank you so much again for being my guest.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate it.
Yay. All right, y'all. That was another amazing episode of Make Mental Health Matter. Again, this show is really to bring resources, information, sharing of those stories, because you never know what somebody is going through. You don't know what their experience is. Even though we may share similar experiences, we all experience things differently. And just like the brain is going to be different for everybody. You may have multiple surgeries, you may not have multiple surgeries. But the key piece, I think, also the conversation that we just had, is making sure that we're advocating for ourselves, advocating for others, and really sharing our experience, because you never know that one person that you may be talking to that really needs to hear what you've been through and needs to know that there is hope in whatever they are going through at that moment. So if this was helpful for you, make sure you reach out and go check out his show also on E360 and Achieve TV channel. We are on the same channel. It's called Invisible Condition. And maybe you're somebody who has an invisible condition and you want to go on his show, or maybe you're somebody that experiences a mental health challenge. You're an advocate for mental health, or you're a professional in the mental health space and you want to come on my show. I would love to have you join me on this show, and you can reach out. The best and easiest or fastest way is to just send blah blah blah. My mouth's going faster than my brain can. Send a message to support@bccevolution.org. Again, this is not about perfection. It's really about getting all the information to you as the viewers. And no matter what you do, make sure you come back next Monday. Again, new time, not a new day, but still on Mondays at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Only one show now, no more Wednesdays, and that's okay. So, whatever you do, I hope you have an amazing evening or wherever you are in the world. Maybe it's the morning. I don't know. And I will see you next Monday. Bye, y'all.